NATO personnel died in a military helicopter crash in Afghanistan, and the alliance said it had killed 11 Taliban there today. There were bombs in Iraq and tensions and violence all over the world. World Peace Day, you see, wasn't a total success. One man, Jeremy Gilley, has spent the last 13 years trying to ensure that on the 21st of September every year, the shooting stops all over the world at the same time. We'll be talking about whether he needs to join the real world shortly. First, a few highlights from a BBC film on the challenges he faced.
My name's Jeremy Gilley. I'm an independent documentary filmmaker. As founder of the organisation Peace One Day, I was going to try to establish the first ever peace day, a day of ceasefire and non-violence.
Well, I thought, this fellow is either a fool or a visionary. And, of course, it's always very difficult to know which of the two.
You say, of course, everybody wants peace, but people also want conflict because that's how their lives are going to change.
You need to be patient with the process or it won't happen.
Absolutely.
And we need to be patient with the process as well, because unless you get support, it won't happen.
Yes.
Putting resolutions together in the UN is the hardest thing in the world.
Mr. President, the United Kingdom and Costa Rican governments have now joined together to strengthen and reinvigorate what was originally brought to our attention by a UK-based organisation served as a global ceasefire day.
It is so decided.
They whack one of them.
4 days later, Secretary-General Kofi Annan was going to announce to the world's press the formation of Peace Day. It was the morning of September the 11th, 2001.
It looks as if two planes have hit the World Trade Center and Kofi Annan is just about to ring the peace bell.
We have been asked to postpone this event. My understanding is we should all move out of here.
It's there right now. You can hear the siren. Oh man, it's just total mayhem. This is incredibly frightening. Will you ring my mum? Just on my phone. They've evacuated the United Nations.
We need something to grab. We need to grab hold of a concept. It's still too up in the air. It's still too lovey-dovey. The cynics will say, Jeremy Gilley, the tree hugger. Crazy man, has crazy ideas. World peace. Give me a break.
The only way to silence the cynics was to silence the guns. We had to make it work in an area of conflict.
So you're saying on the 21st of September, we want a ceasefire in this area of Afghanistan so we can immunise children?
Exactly, this is what we're going to be calling for.
Key figures, well-known individuals, are crucial to engaging and raising awareness. If I could get high-profile people on our side, publicly supporting, attending our events, then that was going to help get the public behind the day.
His campaigning's achieved a lot. However, very simplistically, Jeremy Gilley's main tools appear to be the use of celebrities,
who he seems to think is to be some sort of magic key that will unlock world peace. I've actually complicated his vision there.
Where next? Where are you going next?
I'm going to Afghanistan next. You come with me if you want.
In July? I'm not doing anything in July.
Look like it's pretty safe. Fully aware, okay? Wherever I go, I'd like you two to follow very closely, okay?
He's been pointing his gun around a lot more. So it feels a bit more, I don't know, these little alleys. How do you feel about walking around like this?
Very vulnerable. Walking target.
We would love to support this initiative, but the other side is not your classical military opponent.
A letter's been received by WHO. All Mujahideen of the Islamic Emirates are directed to provide support to UNICEF local vaccinators. This is to save the next generation of the country from this dreadful disease. Well, it's signed by the head of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan Taliban movement. That is incredible. That is absolutely incredible.
Well, Jeremy Gilley is with us now in the studio, as is Anne Leslie, who's reported on wars around the world for the Daily Mail. So you're going to reverse the entire course of human history, are you?
Well, I think what we need to do is establish a day of global unity, a day of intercultural cooperation, separate from politics and religion. The 21st of September is a day of ceasefire and non-violence.
So what would you have liked British soldiers in Afghanistan to have done today?
Well, what I'd like to have seen is what we've seen over the last few years, which is in Afghanistan, NATO, ISAF, the Afghan government, the coalitions observed the day, and as a consequence of observing that day, that allowed humanitarian vaccinators to go into those areas and vaccinate millions of children.
Yes.
No, it's happened for the last 3 years running.
So if they were attacked today, they should not have done anything.
It didn't happen today because of parliamentary elections, but for the last 3 years running, Jeremy, it has worked, and as a consequence of that ceasefire, 4.5 million children have been vaccinated.
Well, that is a good thing, isn't it, Anne Leslie?
Yes, and the trouble is, criticising Jeremy, who's a very nice person and has good intentions, it's like
Watch out, it's coming.
Yes. Kicking a kitten in the teeth. I'm afraid it's a fairly harmless thing that you do. It doesn't make any difference at all.
But it clearly did make a difference. If children were vaccinated...
some children got... But, that should be happening anyway. And the point is...
But it wasn't.
No, well, it was, actually. It is happening. And has been happening, because there have been NGOs doing it. But what I feel is, you say that all of this is to raise awareness. But raise awareness of what? That peace on the whole is better for people than war. Well, I think virtually everyone, except those, and a lot of them do, profit from war, really rather agree. I think it's become terribly narcissistic. It's a way of people in the West saying, I'm such a nice person, and, these movie stars, I'm so nice, you must admire me. I think it's a waste of time, and also it's delusional, because it makes people feel that something is being done.
All right,
the fact is, the only reason wars stop is because one side wins.
Can war ever be justified?
I don't think war can ever be justified.
Never.
No, I think that
fighting the Nazis couldn't be justified.
No, I think there are obviously situations. But listen, Peace One Day doesn't engage in that process. What we're trying to do, Jeremy, we live in a culture of war. We want to live in a culture of peace.
Absolutely.
We must
my
inspire
question was
and
perfectly
empower.
straightforward. I mean, basically, you don't think war can ever be justified?
No, I don't think war can be justified. I don't want to see war happening.
Nobody
I don't want to see people suffering.
Very few people want to see war happening, apart from some lunatics.
Yeah.
So what?
Well, so what? I mean, we've got a choice. We either want to believe in peace, we either want to move the process forward, or we say the situation is so bad, we can't do anything about it, and therefore we give up. I don't want to get up every day. I don't want young people to get up every day and believe that the situation is so dreadful that there's nothing they can do. The 21st of September has been created as a day of ceasefire and non-violence for ordinary people to do things. In every single country of the world, Jeremy, there are millions of people involved in processes. There are 84 different life-saving activities going on today in 31 countries. If those ceasefires hadn't have happened in Afghanistan, the 4.5 million children wouldn't have been vaccinated. And if it was your child who was vaccinated, you'd be saying it was the greatest day.
Yes, individually.
Well, exactly, but that's what happened, Anne.
No,
I respect your opinion, but we must...
be very disrespectful.
Well, you don't respect his.
No, exactly. No, I don't actually. I think the trouble is, and it's not because I'm somebody who doesn't believe that voluntary organisations can work. I belong to a very secretive think tank, which is to do with conflict resolution in the Middle East, between Arabs and Israelis, and Palestinians and Israelis. And we go to Gaza and we talk off the record to Hamas. We go to Ramallah and we talk off the record to Fatah, and we go to Jerusalem and talk totally off the record there. People then tell you the truth, and then you can talk. The minute we have a movie star or clapped-out pop star, and people, swanning around like that, saying, aren't I good, the whole thing would come to a stop.
Don't you have an anxiety about these kind of vacuous celebrity endorsements?
No, not at all. I mean, if you look at the leading organisations, the United Nations, Oxfam, Amnesty, the International Rescue Committee, the fact of the matter is that we live in a society that unless you have people that are like this, it's very difficult to get your message through. I tried for years as an individual who'd been on a journey to tell people that the Day of Peace exists. Nobody bothered. It was only until I worked with incredible individuals, artists, and those people were able to get our message through. And that's exactly why we work with them. And it's been very successful to do that.
Well, I'm even rather beady about ceasefires, because when I covered the wars in former Yugoslavia, there was a ceasefire every other minute, which was used by all the warring people to have a bit of R&R, look after their troops who have been wounded, and then start fighting again. The great ceasefire of the Christmas truce in the First World War, where the squaddies in the trenches, had a truce, and Germans and Brits climbed out and sang hymns and everything. And that was the beginning of one of the longest and bloodiest wars in human history.
The High Command put a stop to it in that case.
Sorry?
The High Command put a stop to it in that case.
Yes, but I don't think it was catching on, because I've read there's been so much about it. I think the only way you actually get peace is when wars finish with one side winning, or both sides are exhausted. And very often, I think, aid, good intentions, prolong wars, because they allow all sides to profit.
Very quickly.
I think it's very interesting. But listen, we've got a day of peace. It's today. In every country of the world there's activity. A lot of that's life-saving. In 150 countries around the world, young people are engaged in the process through their art, their poetry, their literature. And we must inspire a new generation to move from a culture of war to a culture of peace. And unless we do that, we're heading for trouble.
OK, thank you both very much. In a minute, the papers. Before that, though, a quick roundup of some of today's news. Our main story tonight, the Business Secretary Vince Cable will tomorrow launch an attack on capitalism with a speech that warns that the current system takes no prisoners and kills competition where it can. The Cabinet Minister Chris Huhne told Newsnight that unbridled capitalism without strong checks and balances leads to monopoly, which hurts consumers. 27 workers were injured when a bridge to the Commonwealth Games Stadium in Delhi collapsed. The incident added to fears that preparations for the Games, which begin on October the 3rd, are running behind schedule. Several teams have complained that accommodation in the athletes' village is uninhabitable, and there are even suggestions that the Games might have to be cancelled. The BBC Trust has agreed to submit the corporation's finances to scrutiny by the National Audit Office. The public sector spending watchdog will have oversight of executive pay and contracts between the BBC and other companies. The deal will be formally announced at the Lib Dem conference tomorrow. The markets, the FTSE 100 share index was down in New York. The Dow Jones was up against the euro. The pound was down by more than a cent against the euro. The pound was up. And one or two of tomorrow morning's front pages now. Vince